Story of struggles, success lawsuits, the teen founder of Subway, who never made a sub sandwich in his life, took over McDonald's and became the biggest fast food chain in the entire world. In 1965, a 17-year-old, Fred DeLuca, wanted to become a doctor, but he had no idea how he was going to pay for medical school. He'd grown up in public housing in the Bronx, and his family barely had enough money to scrape by. But then one day, Fred and his parents got invited to a barbecue at the house of an old family friend, a nuclear physicist named Peter Burke. Fred asked if he could make enough money for college, secretly hoping Peter might give him a loan, and instead, Peter suggested he open a submarine sandwich shop. Peter had actually had this idea for a while but didn't have time to run it himself, so he said they could be business partners. Fred would run the day-to-day management of the store, and Peter would give him a $1,000 loan to get started. So 17-year-old Fred used that initial loan from his new business partner, along with some help from his mother, to open his first sandwich shop. It was located in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Although originally it wasn't called Subway, they named it Pete's Super Submarines. To drum up interest in their launch, Fred handed out flyers all across the local area, and on their first day, they sold 312 sandwiches, costing less than $1 each. Unfortunately, after the initial hype in the first couple weeks, sales started to fall. Fred's lack of business experience meant their sandwich shop was failing. In fact, by the end of Fred's first summer of running Pete's Super Submarines, he had just $6. For many people, this would be the point where the story ends. The business closes, and they move on. But not for Fred and Peter. Instead, they made an extremely bold business move. Despite their first store in Bridgeport clearly not going well at all, they decided to open another restaurant. To create the image of success, they figured if they had multiple locations, people would assume they must be doing really well and have great products. It was also around this point in 1968 when they rebranded to the much shorter and simpler name, Subway. Peter and Fred were so adamant the idea could work that they set themselves an ambitious goal of opening 32 Subways in the next 10 years. Both of them believed the key to success was visibility and marketing, so they made sure their next Subway restaurants were in much more visible, prominent locations. This led them to their first profitable year earning, $7,000. Not a lot of money considering the work they put in, but proof this business could be profitable. So they continued to reinvest money into opening more locations and advertising Subway. Their persistence was paying off. By 1974, this unlikely duo had grown from a single failing sandwich store to 16 different Subway branches throughout Connecticut. However, each of their restaurants were quite inconsistent in how they looked and operated, depending on which Subway restaurant you visited. The experience could be very different, as they couldn't properly manage them all. They'd originally set a goal of 32 restaurants in 10 years, and with only 2 years left on that target, they were only halfway there. So, Fred wondered if instead of directly owning and managing their future Subway restaurants themselves, what if they franchised and let other driven entrepreneurs have their own Subway restaurants, which they were fully focused on, but that followed the exact same format and menu that had been successful with their first 16 locations. This way, Fred and Peter didn't have to worry about operating their own restaurants and dealing with customers, staff, and suppliers themselves. Other people would pay to set up a Subway restaurant and use all the Subway branding and products. This is when Peter's role in the business started to get even smaller. He became a silent partner and didn't even have his own office at Subway HQ. If someone asked him a question about the business, he would famously say, "Talk to Fred." Peter did continue to take his share of the profits though, earning him an incredible return on his initial $1,000 investment. But still, once Fred and Peter agreed to franchise Subway in 1974, they managed to get 15 franchisees signed up that year. And by 1981, they'd gone national, opening 200 locations across the United States and 100 more the following year. Franchising was clearly the way forward for Subway. These franchises were one of the cheapest to set up, costing a fraction of the amount it takes to set up a McDonald's, Taco Bell, or Wendy's. Subway wanted its franchise locations to be fast to build, cheap to run, and sometimes unconventional locations. You can find Subways in petrol stations, airports, post office, hospitals, universities, and even on military bases. It gets weirder too. A fake Virginia town built by the FBI to train its agents is home to a very real Subway. There's an entirely kosher Subway in a Jewish community center in Ohio, and you can even get your hands on a foot-long sub in a German river cruise ship. So for a Subway, no location is too strange or small. It'll open a franchise virtually anywhere, and this enabled them to expand more rapidly than competitors. Fred and Peter not only got an upfront fee for every new franchisee, they also got 8% ongoing royalties of all the money the franchise made at its peak. Fred was receiving checks worth roughly $7 million every Monday, which were his royalties from all the different Subway stores. However, while this franchise model was proven great for Fred and Peter, for the franchisees actually running the Subway shops, things were not so great. Fred was known for micromanaging his franchisees. In fact, it's claimed Fred had no personal boundaries at all and reportedly felt like he could come onto the wives of franchisee owners at Subway conventions because he believed their husband's success was all down to him. One business associate claimed if he wore a skirt and had a pulse, he would chase you. Meanwhile, many franchise owners had accused the company of defrauding them or tricking them into binding, uncompromising contracts. In 1998, 40 of Subway franchise owners said they were just getting by and making a few dollars. Part of the problem is that Fred was so keen to expand Subway and open more stores in small areas, making it very difficult for one restaurant to make much profit because there was just too much competition. When asked about this, Fred said, "This is America." The Subway sales team who signed up new franchisees also seemed to be quite targeted in their sales approach. A former Subway executive said 30 to 50% of franchisees are immigrants, and many struggle to understand the complex contracts they were signing because they were written in their second or third language. One ex-Subway employee even said, "I've seen over 300 franchise agreements, and Subway's is the worst." In fact, some of the contract terms were even declared illegal in certain U.S. states. It gave Fred the power to seize any franchise and its assets if he wanted to. He could set up franchises close together, making the restaurants fight each other for business, and ban franchise owners from ever talking to the media. So in 2017, some Subway franchises decided to break this rule and told Business Insider that Subway's slogan, "Eat fresh," was far from true. The ingredients they were forced to order only arrived once a week, leading to mushy and rotten vegetables. If they tried to order from different suppliers or schedule more regular orders, some had their franchises taken away and licenses revoked. If even the cucumbers weren't sliced correctly, franchises could risk having their royalty rates increased or losing their restaurant altogether. Considering all this, you may assume many franchise owners would want to take legal action, but their contracts forbade them from ever suing Subway. Meanwhile, things were going great for Fred and Peter. Subway was going international, opening its first restaurant outside the US in 1984. But unlike many other chains, they didn't choose Europe or Asia. The first international Subway opened in Bahrain, a small Arab state made up of over 30 individual islands. It's never been confirmed why Subway chose this unlikely location, but it's been speculated that the small size made it a great place for testing out Subway's products in a new territory. Fred was constantly obsessed with opening more stores. He'd set goals for how many stores they should open each year, and all the employees would think it was insane. But then they'd actually achieve it, and instead of going on holiday, Fred would go abroad to find new locations for Subway. So despite some unhappy franchisees, Subway's plan for fast global expansion was in full flow, and to cement their reputation and boost sales even more, the company was about to take advantage of one of the greatest promotions in fast food history. Unfortunately, it ended up causing a gigantic scandal. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Subway developed a key marketing strategy that made it stand out from the rest of the fast food crowd. It pushed the message that its sandwiches were pretty healthy. After all, the ingredients all look fresh. They bake their bread on site, nothing was deep fried, and the customer could choose exactly what to put on their sandwich from ingredients laid out right in front of them. According to Subway, there are technically 4.9 billion possible combinations. So in 1997, Subway started to advertise 7 sandwiches it claims were low-fat, comparing them to the high-calorie burgers and tacos made by their rivals. Not only that, but Subway could claim something really impressive. A customer of theirs named Jared Fogle claimed to have lost 245 pounds by eating 2 Subway sandwiches each day. It was such great marketing that Subway hired him as their spokesperson in 2000. Jared Fogle became the successful face and body of Subway, representing the Subway diets. His ads were a massive hit. In fact, sales increased by 20% after its first commercial social ads. At one point, Subway's chief marketing officer reportedly claimed Fogle was responsible for up to half of Subway's recent growth. Fogle's Subway diet made him a celebrity, and he was featured in Subway ads for over a decade, often holding up the giant pair of jeans he used to fit into. Jared Fogle was starring in TV commercials, boosting sandwich sales, and even meeting Oprah. Subway had seemingly hit the jackpot by finding this guy to be the face of their brand. And then, just about the absolute worst thing that could happen involving your company's spokesperson happened. In 2015, Fogle's home was raided, and they found explicit images and messages with young kids. He was convicted of possessing and distributing child abuse images and grooming and exploiting minors. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Subway abruptly cut ties with Fogle and of course denied any knowledge of this. But it turns out that Fogle's ex-wife actually sued Subway, claiming the company had been told about Fogle's interest in children, but since they were making so much money from his ads, they did nothing about it. Subway's controversies didn't stop there, as their health claims soon started to come under severe criticism as well. This is when the lawsuits and accusations began. Subway was accused of using a chemical found in yoga mats to make its bridge, using a substance that wasn't really tuna, and having chicken that contained more soya than meats. They were also accused of selling footlongs that were actually only 11 inches long. Subway challenged all these statements and settled some of them out of court, although they did agree to phase out the yoga mat chemical. Fred had big goals from the very early days of the company, even back when it was called Pete's Super Submarines. In fact, according to their very first employee, Fred always wanted his company to be bigger than McDonald's and would never be happy until he reached there. By 2011, Subway had done it while McDonald's still dwarfed them in revenue. Subway was winning in terms of total locations. In 2016, the chain hit its peak with 44,000 locations worldwide, serving an estimated 5,300 sandwiches every minute. Unfortunately, Fred would not be there to see that, as he died of leukemia in 2015. By the time of his death, his net worth had passed $3 billion. When Fred died, there was no real succession plan, and nobody else understood the business as well as Fred had. It's perhaps then not surprising that Subway's location count has declined every year since Fred died in 2015. Franchisees interviewed by Business Insider in 2018 claimed that 1/3 of its U.S. locations are not profitable, and Subway's business model's been described as too big too fast, creating too much competition with itself and making it impossible for every franchise to make a healthy profit. Fred's lifelong obsession with expansion had perhaps gone too far. Plus, while other fast food restaurants were innovating their menus and locations, Subway, without its original leader, was now stagnating. It had lost its crucial marketing tools, like Jared Fogle, and its perceived reputation as a healthy choice. Plus, the various lawsuits about mystery meat and weird ingredients damaged the brand prices. It's still an absolutely massive fast food chain making a lot of money and still has plenty of time to turn things around, but what the next chapter of the Subway story holds still remains to be seen now.